everyone! My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are celebrating the fact that my channel isn't dead. If you don't know what I'm talking about, basically YouTube decided it was going to give me community guideline strikes for posting links and references in my videos that went to BDSM websites of educators. It was really messy. I talked about it on Twitter in a live stream, so if you want like the full details, you can go there. But today I'm celebrating the fact I still have a channel, because for a while there it looked like YouTube might actually just delete my account. So in honor of still being here, I wanted to do something kind of fun and lighthearted, and I thought it would be a great idea to do a little bit of a hot take reaction. We have done this before. It's been really fun, and so I asked you all over on Twitter and Instagram for your hot takes so I can react to them, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get into it. The first one is actually from myself to get things started, because this was in the back of my head that kind of led to me wanting to do a hot take video, so we're gonna get myself out of the way first. So my hot take is, I don't understand why people that like jute complain that hemp smells like grass, because jute smells like petrochemicals. It smells like being inside of an oil rig. So I don't understand why people are like, oh my god, jute smells so much better. And to me, I've now handled like 10 different kinds of jute at this point, and unless it's specifically JBO free, which is the oil they use to manufacture jute rope, unless it doesn't have that and it has an alternative, it just smells like chemicals to me, and I'm not sorry about it. And you know what? I agree with myself. I actually used to be a horse girl back in the day. I was a certified horse girl, and so for me, that grassy smell of hemp actually reminds me of like being in a horse barn, and it's very nostalgic. So, you know, I guess I don't really know why pony play isn't a kink for me, but there's some extra information about me for you all, and that's my hot take. If you like jute, do you agree with me? Or do you not? Let me know. So this first one says, FetLife as a kinky information resource for beginners is dangerous since a lot is fantasy. And I actually agree with this one, because I always recommend FetLife as not being like a dating website. I always say it's for finding events. It is for reconnecting with people you meet at events, and that's what it's meant for. I haven't really talked about FetLife for education before though, and I would say when you're on there, it can be very hard to tell what is someone's erotica, fantasy, story versus actual information. And as someone that does have more experience, now I can go on FetLife and look for information about latex, about dyeing natural fiber rope. Like, I can look for that because I have enough information to be able to tell, okay, this is a person who's just like jerking off while they're typing this versus someone that's actually trying to provide a resource that has accurate information. So I also don't recommend FetLife for new people to find information. I think the one exception to this is when it is a kink that is more on the rare side. So, you know, latex, cell popping, even if they're not necessarily rare or like difficult to do, sometimes they are niche enough to where educational information about them isn't really available, because maybe the focus is more on like the fetish pornography side. Like, again, for example, with latex, I think that happens a lot. So yeah, I think it's kind of a mixed bag, but I definitely wouldn't recommend FetLife just point blank for anyone that's newer to look at it as a way to get accurate, concrete information about like anything really. So this next one says, switch for switch relationships are underrated and not talked about enough. I agree with this, and I think that's kind of a failure of, you know, I think me as an educator in particular is I'm not a switch. I can't really offer the perspective of being a switch in a relationship. I have talked about it before a long time ago on my channel, kind of a guide to being a switch and talking about being in a relationship while a switch. And though it's very popular in my local scene, I don't see it a lot on, let's say, like the national level for educators. I don't know a lot of people that are educators that talk from that switch perspective with another switch. I think there are lots of switches that do educate and are really well known, but they don't talk about it at that level, if that makes sense. Like, I think Lee Harrington is a switch. I think the people that wrote the New Guide to Topping and the New Guide to Bottoming are switches, but they tend to approach things from like I'm a top with this person and I'm a bottom with this person, but not like going back and forth with the same individual or being in a two switch relationship. So yeah, I agree. It's definitely really underserved, and I would love to see more of that in the future. So I also asked for your questions, or your hot takes rather, about polyamory too. So this is like BDSM, poly. I just wanted to kind of have a little bit of a wider net this time because we do sometimes talk about alternative relationships in this channel. So this one says, I'm poly, but I have a favorite partner. Is that fair, or am I not suited to be poly? So this is like, I guess, a personal question. And I did have a lot of people send me personal questions, and like if you asked one of those, I'm not gonna talk about it because this is a hot take video, not a Q&A. So I apologize for any confusion, but I think the hot take here is like, if you have a favorite partner, you can't be poly. And I think there is certainly a stigma in polyamory against people that have a very strong hierarchy. I think the dominant narrative tends to be no hierarchy is best, love everyone equally, don't treat anyone special, you know, everyone should be on the same level. But I think in the reality of having relationships, naturally some people will find a style of poly where they have one partner that they prioritize. And I'm going to use prioritize instead of favorite because I think I don't like comparing people, I guess. So I'm not like pro like saying I have a favorite human, but I am willing to look at it from the idea of I have a person that I prioritize the most, that I spend the most time with, and our relationship is like the most devoted. And I think you can have a relationship where you do have that kind of deeper level of hierarchy, but the key thing with any kind of poly is making sure everyone involved knows what's going on. And if you are not comfortable telling your other partners that they're not the favorite, then you probably shouldn't be doing poly that's based on that style. So I guess I don't really know if I like agree or disagree. I don't even know if that's like a thing I can do with this one, but that's my thoughts about it. Oh my god, this is perfect. Okay, so this one says, male doms need to think of another outfit option other than Olive Garden waiter. I agree. Like, I don't even know if I could disagree with this. I think it's like, it depends on what scene you're in. I don't think every scene, and by scene I mean like local area, has an issue with this. But if you look online for like outfits for doms or dominant man, it's like suit, tie, sometimes with a jacket, sometimes with suspenders, and like that's the option. Of course, where I live, everything is so casual that you're lucky to find anyone that even like owns a tie. Most people show up in like cargo shorts or graphic t-shirts, which is fine. I think that's acceptable. But yeah, I think overall we need more options for doms besides Olive Garden waiter. Definitely agree on that one. Ooh, okay, this is a real controversial hot take we got here. So this person says, controversial. I know my kinks derive from my traumas growing up. So I guess the hot take here is your kinks can be derived from your childhood trauma. I agree with it under the premise of can. I think on an individual level, some people do develop kinks as a coping mechanism for things that they have gone through. That could be in childhood, that could be later on, it could be any of a number of different types of trauma, but I think it does happen, and there is a very reasonable neurobiological scientific explanation for this, and I always recommend this book. It is called The Erotic Mind by Jack Morin, and he talks about this, where essentially the tool that our brain can use to help cope with trauma and very deep issues is to eroticize it, to recontextualize it in a way that is safer for our conscious mind to digest. And I definitely think that that can happen with kinks, and that's totally valid. And I think my one piece of advice would be, if you are going to play with kinks that do originate from that source, you want to make sure the partners that you are playing with understand that that's where it's connected to, because they might not be available necessarily for helping you process that or work through that if you are trying to go in the direction of engaging in my kinks that originate in trauma in order to deal with the trauma. Like, it's like a big ask for a lot of people, and they should be aware of that as part of having an informed risk profile for play. So I agree, but we have to be cautious to not say that like everyone's kinks are developed from some kind of trauma experience, because they definitely do not have to be. Okay, let me see. Oh, okay. I was like, I need to find one that I'm gonna like disagree with, and found one. Okay, so this person says, newbies don't take top/bottom identities seriously. They meet someone that they like and adapt/lie. Okay, I disagree. I think I'm seeing what this person is saying, but I understand it in a different way. So I think when you are new to BDSM and you are exploring top, bottom, switch, master, slave, submissive, pet, whatever, you kind of try on different hats. You try on different things, and you see what you really want out of that experience, out of kind of having those moments where you decide, okay, I'm not really a top, I'm not really a bottom, I want this, I want that. And the only way that you can really know that is by having experiences with other people, in my opinion. Sometimes people just like know 100% and they don't have to test it out at all, in which case, like, good for you, you have figured it out well before most of us have. But I don't think it's like they don't take it seriously on purpose, as they treat it as like a flippant thing. I just think they don't know what they're doing yet. So like, it is something that is more flexible than someone that does have more experience and takes it more seriously as the natural part of growing into who you are as a kinkster. And I think the second part of that is like, they change who they are for a partner and they lie. If that does happen, the way that I see it happen personally is like, I'm going to use some like gendered labels here for a moment, but that's only because I have only ever heard it in this combination before. But it is when a girlfriend that is submissive pressures a boyfriend to be dominant, even when that's not what he really wants to do. So I guess in that case, the boyfriend maybe would be changing his label, or maybe he's like a switch, but he can't really switch with her, and so he's only a dom when that's not like his true identity. So I can kind of see that a little bit, but I don't think someone outright lies. I think there can be a pressure to conform to make someone else happy, and valuing the relationship over being honest and true to yourself. And it takes a level of maturity and understanding to be able to get out of that place and realize that your own internal truth and your own values are more important than somebody else thinking that you should be a pet or a slave or a little or whatever, when that doesn't really speak to you. So if there are lies, I think that comes from a place of pressure to want to maintain a relationship. So I don't generally agree, but I understand where this person maybe is getting that idea from. Okay. This is a good one. Okay, so this one says, orgies are awkward, to be honest. I've never been part of an orgy personally. I have seen people I don't know if they're orgies. Where's the boundary between orgy and like multiple partner sex? Like, does it have to be 5 or more for it to be an orgy? Like, what's the rule there? I would say that there is a lot of media that represents orgies and multiple partner sex as being this like super intense, like really erotic experience that's like super hot. And my understanding from people that do have sex like that fairly often or go to events for it is like it's a lot of like awkward trying to get people to go first, making sure you're remembering everybody's boundaries and everyone is comfortable with everything and all the different bodily noises and everything else. I do agree. I think they can be awkward, and my hot take is that they are overrated, but I am asexual, so maybe I'm not like the best person to ask on this one. Let me see. I think I'm gonna do like 2 more on Instagram, and then I'm gonna go over and go to Twitter. Okay, here's one. This one says, unicorn hunting isn't always bad. So for those who don't know, unicorn hunting is an approach to wanting to make a multi-partner relationship where the ideal is to have an equilateral 3-way relationship with usually one man and 2 women, and the women are supposed to be like bisexual with each other. And usually what happens in unicorn hunting is you have an existing, usually starting as a monogamous heterosexual or bi-curious couple that then is like, hey, we're looking for a third to spice things up in the bedroom. We're looking for a nice lady to love equally and to love us equally and go on dates with us. And the reason why this has a really bad stereotype, and I think Kat Black has videos on this, which if I can link them, I will put them below. If they are not there, go to Kat's channel because I think she has talked about unicorn hunting on there a couple of times before. But the reason why unicorn hunting gets a bad rap is because people tend to approach finding a third as trying to find like a special shiny object. Like the person isn't really a person, they're a way to like solve a puzzle or to get a need met. They're not really their own person. They are there to do something for the couple, not to have a third person have their own complete set of needs, wants, ways of being in the relationship. Like it tends to be very, very restrictive. And a lot of the people that have been recruited into unicorn hunting and originated relationships tend to report having negative experiences as a result and basically being tossed by the wayside because the core couple unit is prioritized over the third person ultimately. I think if you are doing a triad relationship, if you are doing it well, it's not called unicorn hunting. I think unicorn hunting is a particular term that is used to describe when you are looking for a third partner in a negative way where you are not treating the other person as a complete person. And I do think you have to do that even if you are just looking for sex or a very casual relationship. I think in order to have good consent and for everyone to have a good experience in the relationship, you have to keep that person in mind as a whole separate entity. And if you can't do that, then like you're gonna end up in this quagmire of bad issues. So I don't agree. I think that unicorn hunting as a term is used for bad triad relationships and trying to find a triad in a negative way. And if you do it well, then it's not going to be called unicorn hunting, in my opinion. Twitter went pretty hard with the hot takes here. So the first one says, dark kinks, CNC, age play, etc. are perfectly fine and healthy and not an indicator of being a toxic person as long as there is consent and communication. And I am like doing this one as a catch-all for like the dozen hot takes I got about race play, age play, pedophilia, bestiality, pet play. Like I got a bunch of those. And I think there is definitely a narrative where like some kinks are okay, but certain ones should be like illegal. Like I literally had someone say that like dark age play or something should be illegal, and I was like, okay, we're gonna talk about this one. So I think that communication and consent are the two primary things. And I think you are allowed as a viewer to be disgusted by anything that you are disgusted by. I don't think that you are not allowed to have those feelings or those emotions, but I think people, as long as they are engaging in things in a risk aware, consensual manner with the people that are actively involved, that is the thing that is the most important. Now, that does not mean I'm pro, like, going to a general BDSM newbie night, having, like, a full Nazi uniform on, and doing, like, a Nazi race play, DDLG age play scene, like, all together at the same time. Like, I'm not, like, for that. I think there is a time and a place, but if it is in a space where it is allowed and everything is consensual and informed, I think it's very difficult to police what other people's kinks are, because it's like, where do you stop doing that? Because eventually you get to the point where another person, given the same option, would eliminate one of the kinks that is really important to you for similar reasons. Like, some people think that CNC or ravishment play or things like that shouldn't be allowed because they perpetuate rape culture and they glorify it. Some people think that DDLG is just dressed up pedophilia. There are people that think, I'm trying to think of other ones, people that think that like dark pet play is just bestiality. And, you might be able to say, okay, well, I think this kink is bad and we shouldn't have it. But then the farther you go down, like, there are many different ways to oppose lots of different kinks under very, very strong guidelines, I suppose. And so I think it's like kind of tricky to say like these kinks are okay and these ones are not, if you aren't participating in them. So I don't think it makes you like a bad or toxic person to be into certain things. I think what makes you a bad, toxic person is when you engage in them with non-consenting parties and do them inappropriately. Like, doing them in public, doing them in front of children. Like, don't do that, please. But if you're doing it in private with other consenting adults, that is the thing that matters in my mind. Definitely a hot take with that one. Oh shit, this is like, we're getting real over here. Okay, this one says, people, especially cis men, need to unlearn misogyny, homophobia, and transphobia before engaging in sissification. So, I have never covered sissies on my channel because I don't engage in that kink. I don't know anything about it. I don't know anyone that does. I've never taken a class on it. I have a vague understanding about it, but I know for a lot of people, especially trans women, even cis women, it feels very othering and derogatory to have a man dress up like a woman, or like a girl more accurately, in order to be humiliated. And I think if you are going to engage in that, you do need to unpack kind of the reasons behind that kink, and like, is that coming from a place of homophobia, of misogyny, of trans misogyny, of being afraid of like being trans? Like, there are lots of reasons that kink can be the way that it is, and especially if you're going to be doing it in public, you should do that work ahead of time so you can engage with it in a thoughtful manner. But yeah, I mean, sissification in and of itself is like a controversial kink, so I can understand why. But yeah, I think I agree, doing any kind of work, if you are working with anything that is kind of edgier and darker, and especially, in this case, is pretending to be a member of another group, like, yeah, it's probably worth doing a little introspection over, Again, no kink shaming, just saying like, hey, we can engage in our kinks thoughtfully, Okay, so this one just says sex magic. I guess they want my opinion about sex magic. My opinion is that I am happy for anyone that has found a spiritual path in life that makes them feel happy and fulfilled. And I know there's lots of people like Lee Harrington and Raven Caldera that have talked about spirituality and kink and where that intersects and magic and everything else. And I think that's great if you have that as part of your BDSM. That's great. Just don't do cultural appropriation while you do it. That's all I want. Don't do cultural appropriation, please. If you're doing it, that's my hot take. That's it. That's all I got. Okay, so this one says, the BDSM gatekeeping by people who are into very formal versions of BDSM is very annoying. Yeah, I am not for gatekeeping. I think if you have your tradition and your style, that is great. I just don't think we need to gatekeep as much as we do because, as we know, abstinence-only education doesn't work. And so if we deny people access to the kink scene because they aren't doing it our way, then people are going to do stuff on their own, alone, at home, get hurt each other, die. Like, having access to community is actually like pretty important, and I think we should value safety and access over like maintaining a like pure standard of what like kink should be, you know? Ooh, okay, here's one I think people are gonna have opinions about. 50 Shades is fine if read as fantasy and not tutorial. There is no limit to what one can enjoy as fiction. So I actually agree with this. I think me 5 years ago would not agree with this, but I actually have a video script that I wrote up a while ago where I talk about the impact of 50 Shades on the kink community as like a retrospective of the series. And I do think that ultimately, as long as you go into it knowing what you're getting into, it can be a funny read, it can be a fun ride, it can be erotica. Like, if you know how to separate fantasy and reality, like, I think you can totally read it as fiction. I think the thing that people get worried about is like, people are gonna think this is an instruction manual, and like, yeah, that's bad. We don't want people thinking any kind of erotica is supposed to be purely instructional. But I think if you are engaging in it, knowing what it is and knowing it is only a fantasy, then I really don't think it's that awful by comparison. Okay, this one got a lot of likes. I guess people really want to know what I think about this one, or maybe people just like really agree with it. But it says, male subs are much more often depicted as less than nothing degradee gimps who get treated like shit than classy subs compared to female. You can easily find female subs depicted as classy, elegant, respected women. Yeah, I agree with this. I think there is a stereotype of male submissives being in gimp suits, being sissies, being adult babies, and like, if you're not that, then like you don't exist in, I guess, the cultural lens of what people consider to be kinky. And it's like, I you know what, actually, I just had like a total brain blast moment. I think the reason why is because submission is considered the opposite of masculinity. And so in order for like our culture to understand men that are submissive, they have to remove them from masculinity as much as possible. Because if they're submissive, then they're not masculine. And so what are the ways to de-masculinize someone? Right? You make them a baby. You make them a girl. You make them lower than dirt. You make them non-human. Right? And so it's, I wonder if there's like a through line in all of those kinks where it's like, you are being removed from masculinity. You're being removed from like having a role in the patriarchy, kind of. I have to think about that more. That's an interesting one. That's gonna go in my noggin, and I'm gonna think about that for like 2 or 3 days now. But yeah, I think people even subconsciously can kind of look down on male submissives and have very, very negative stereotypes about them. And I feel like they aren't as always included in conversations about like subs having value and subs being good people. That does tend to go more towards female submissives having value and male submissives kind of not always being called out in that conversation. Okay, So this one is gonna be the last one, and I think we're ending on like a little bit of a bummer note, but I think I do need to address this one because I got a version of this a lot. So this one says there is no such thing as the kink community. As a monolith that adheres to universal standards, nearly every large group harbors predators, usually because they're popular. The het/pan kink scene is pretty homophobic, especially towards gay men and trans people. There's a lot going on here, so I think I want to say first of all that I do a fair amount of talking about like predators in the community, people that use BDSM as a way to disguise their abuse, people that use BDSM to like make a cult. Essentially, like I talk about that a lot, and I think it's very hard to judge what kink is like as a whole based on your experience in one local place as your primary entry point, because I think depending on where you live, you are going to have a very different experience. And if I remember correctly, this person lives in LA, and as far as I know, the LA kink scene is a fucking dumpster fire. It is like the worst scene that I have ever heard of. There's just constant issues like that make it into the news. Like it's really, really bad. In my experience in different places, you know, on the East Coast, in Chicago, in Florida, like everywhere is going to have a different flavor, different leaders to different groups. I think there are some things in this that are true. Like I don't think there is like a singular kink community. I talk about it because it's like the simplest way to frame the fact that everyone in the world can potentially be doing BDSM. But yeah, like the kink scene in London, in the UK, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in South Africa, in Canada, in the US, like they're all going to be different. They're all going to have their own forms, structures, traditions. And I think, you know, the part in this that I think I agree with the most is that like large groups harbor predators. I don't always know if it's because they're popular. I think it can also be because they have a unique skill set. They are the ones in the community that have money to host events or own buildings. They are the ones that are like the primary educators in a scene. I don't think it's just popularity. There can be things behind that popularity that lead them to like anointing themselves as like being the group leader. But yeah, I've stopped going to a lot of venues when I have found out that, you know, their primary educator for rope bondage has like 5 SA allegations against them and they're still fucking teaching. Like, mind blown on that one. It definitely does happen. But even as people are like replying to this one on Twitter, because unlike on Instagram, these aren't private, like there are other people saying, I've never experienced that. So like clearly there is already difference between different people and different scenes. I think I also like somewhat agree with the heterosexual and the pansexual scene being somewhat homophobic and transphobic. I think there is more of a shift towards being more openly accepting, but I think it's just like the downfall of like the types of people that run events. Like if every single event is run by like a rich white guy like it is in most places in the US, like there are going to be blind sites if they don't take a lot of time to engage in like, I don't know what to call it, just like engaging in like being like fighting their own internalized homophobia, like fighting their own internal issues with transphobia, unless they take a lot of time as event organizers, as leaders, to really make sure they're staying on top of that. Like eventually some of that bias or prejudice is going to leak out into how they organize things, or even when people feel comfortable in those spaces or not. So I don't like agree with the idea that like all of kink is really dangerous and everywhere is like just super homophobic and transphobic. I think there are smaller instances of that happening that is more common than we sometimes talk about, but that doesn't mean that's like how everything is on like the top level as like a primary thing that everyone is going to experience. I think there can be those things. I think there can be issues, but I don't think it's like as likely as I don't think we're on the same page about exactly how likely it is, I guess is what I would say. I agree it's there, but maybe not to the extent that this person is kind of saying it is. So like half agree, half disagree. But that is all of the questions I have time for today, hot takes I have time for today. I hope you all enjoyed these. I really enjoy hearing everyone's perspectives. I would love to know your guys' thoughts about these hot takes, your ideas down in the comment section below. Anything else that you want to say down there, feel free. If you have not already and you like this video, please do subscribe because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you really enjoyed this, if you want to support what I do, the best way that you can do that is with Patreon. YouTube really does not like my channel, so if you want to make sure you keep getting access to my content and I can keep doing this, Patreon is the way to go. If you do already support me over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.